let me also chime in very quickly to thank all of the very hardworking faculty and school administrators for making something like this possible. We all know, if we've done any of this, how work-intensive, time-intensive, labor-intensive this all is. So, Joanne, thank you very much. Thank you, John. And now I get to talk about one of my great passions, Costa Rica. Let me just start by saying that my wife is Costa Rican, and she tells of the numerous times that people, when finding out that she is from Costa Rica, say to her that they have really wanted to visit Costa Rica. They hear it is so beautiful, and it is so convenient that you don't need a passport since it is a territory of the U.S. No, she says, that's Puerto Rico. So to clarify, here is a map of Costa Rica. Located immediately south of Nicaragua and north of Panama in Central America. The Pacific Ocean borders to the west and the Atlantic Ocean borders to the east. And from the highest point in central Costa Rica, you can actually see both oceans at about 100 miles apart. Costa Rica is a modern democratic success story, being a stable country both politically and economically. And you can see that beginning in 1821, Costa Rica was independent from Spain and rather quickly began to establish its educational legacy with the founding of its first university in 1843, first National School of Music in 1889, St. Cecilia School of Music in 1894, and its first public school music inspector position in 1894 as well. In 1896, the cultural pride of Costa Rica, its National Theater, was opened in San Jose. Built as a replica of the Paris Opera House, it was built with precious materials from Europe. Since San Jose, Costa Rica was the second major city in the world to be totally lit by electricity, Paris was the first. The theater was electrically illuminated. On December 1st, 1948, President Jose Figueres abolished the military of Costa Rica, establishing Costa Rica as a country held in high regard. The budget previously dedicated to the military was now dedicated to security, education, and culture. The museum, Museo Nacional de Costa Rica, was placed in the Cuartel Bellavista as a symbol of commitment to culture. That was a military fort. In 1986, President Oscar Arias Sanchez, who won the Nobel Peace Prize for his peace initiatives in Central America, declared December 1st as Día de la Abolición de Ejército, a military abolition day. Unlike its neighbors, Costa Rica has not endured a civil war since 1948. Costa Rica maintains small forces capable of law enforcement, foreign peacekeeping, but has no permanent standing army. Therefore, a great deal of effort has been placed in establishing and developing its music schools, universities, national symphony orchestras, youth music programs. The Conservatory of Music of the University of Costa Rica was founded in 1942, and the School of Music of the National University was founded in 1974. Choral music has developed more recently than instrumental music, as seen by Israel Carrillo's 1993 DMA dissertation from the University of Cincinnati. Only 28 choirs are formed between 1870 and 1993. Costa Rican composers are cited with only 111 original choral works. with Alejandro Modestal being the first choral composition in 1865. Since 1993, through the influence of teaching, as well as a new national music education system for orchestras and choirs, there has been a significant increase in choral participation. The School of Music at National University is where choral music has been most developed and where the strongest choral influences have been centered. The first recognized influence to a modern choral movement was Marco Dusi, who was recruited in 1974 from Chile to Costa Rica to found the National Symphony Chorus and to guide public school choral music. After only 5 years, he returned to Chile, where he now directs a community choral program in the charming seaside city of Valparaiso. And his significant contribution was that he personally charmed some of today's national choral leaders in Costa Rica away from their original instruments and into choosing choral music as their profession. He also introduced the country to the activity of choral festivals. Roger Wesby was a trumpet player who decided to stay in Costa Rica following his term of service in the Peace Corps. He played in the National Symphony, became coordinator of academics for the National Youth Symphony. He also was influenced by Marco Dusi, and when Dusi left Costa Rica, Roger continued to train students of Marco Dusi at the National University, where he eventually served as director of the School of Music and conductor of both choral music and jazz ensembles. Roger returned to the United States to complete his doctoral studies in choral conducting at Indiana University and currently teaches at Wagner College in Staten Island. And so I asked Roger if he would like to virtually present at this session, and he therefore offered these remarks to us here in North Dakota. Thank you for the opportunity to add some of my experience in Costa Rica. The 1970s marked a turbulent time in Latin America. In the midst of this chaos stood a constitutional democracy with no army and the highest literacy rate in the hemisphere, tiny Costa Rica, the Switzerland of the Americas. A neutral country open to all ideologies. This country became the beneficiary of a brain drain of artists, musicians, and academics from all over Latin America, seeking a life free from repression and violence. A renaissance of sorts started in Costa Rica in 1971 when a daring vice minister of culture, Guido Sainz, instituted a radical reform of the orchestra, bringing in many foreign musicians to perform and also to teach in a new youth program that would quickly transform the country's musical life and serve as an inspiration to many other countries, most especially Venezuela. In 1974, just when I arrived, it was time for Chapter 2 of the reforms, choral music. Marco Dusi, the Italo-Chilean conductor, was hired to found the National Symphony Chorus, who also became choral assessor for the Ministry of Education. He quickly brought out a booklet of accessible repertoire for choirs and songs for children that was distributed all over the country. These were the days of white heat creativity, as a couple of colleagues and I transformed a struggling little subsection of a discredited department into a full-blown flagship school of an arts faculty. We trained choral conductors, formed 3 major ensembles within our school, and started, through our graduates, Johnny Appleseed style, to plant choirs in municipal music schools all over the country. We created a graduate level program, licenciatura, for the choral conductors, and our graduates from that program are among the most important choral conductors in the country. So as you can see, Costa Rica provided a rich environment in which to grow and mature as a choral musician, and I'm proud to have made a contribution to its development has a rich choral culture. Thank you, Roger. In 1985, as a result of the United Nations building a university in Costa Rica, the University for Peace, there was an early effort to include an institutional choir, Coro para la Paz, which, just for un chiste, a joke, that some of the choirs, competing choirs in the country, did a play on words and called it Coro para la Paz. But La Paz is like a parrot. So they did a word game on it, so Coro de la Paz, Coro de la Paz. Its director was an Italian on loan to Costa Rica from Italy from the international effort, and Jose Maria Sciutto was his name, was in Costa Rica for only 2 years, but he was one of the busiest, people I've ever met. He directed the National Symphony Chorus, taught at the National University, as well as building the Coro para la Paz. But for me, his most important act was to invite me for my first time to Costa Rica in 1986 to teach, to conduct a concert featuring vocal cantatas and choral music of Vivaldi. Since 1986, I have taught, conducted, and consulted to various national programs on more than 40 occasions. My university chamber singers at Cal State LA was the first university choir to visit Costa Rica on a formal concert tour and academic exchange. And that was as recently as 1989. Currently, my family, as I mentioned before, and I are living in Costa Rica as a Fulbright scholar until July, and I'm teaching choral conductors in technique and pedagogy throughout the country, generally for that sistema. So I'm teaching teachers who are teaching but have little formal training actually in choral direction. So to summarize, the influences to the choral development of Costa Rica during the 1970s were centered around outside influences and multiple demonstrations of possibility. The infrastructure of choral development was formed during this time. That was the 70s. The 1980s and 90s saw the results of further outside contributions, largely from Europe, as well as the establishment of long-term partnerships within a mentor-protege context. The goal during this time was to teach others to teach. Individual Costa Ricans pursued graduate degrees on Fulbright scholarships to the United States, such as Israel Carrillo at Cincinnati Conservatory and David Ramirez at Cal State LA. These individuals returned to Costa Rica to teach at the National University and to build the only university degree program in choral studies available in Central America, attracting students from across the region. The first Master of Arts degree in choral conducting will begin at the National University with its first class of students in August 2013, and I will proudly serve on this faculty as well. The choral development of Costa Rica is a recent success and is seen as the result of innovation by a particular government minister, the importation of expertise to help establish an infrastructure of choral organizations and choral training. And finally, there has been an outreach to students from across Central America to offer formal education in choral conducting. The work that is seen as important for the future growth of choral music in Costa Rica is first, to assure that a next generation of choral musicians are prepared and ready to assume leadership. Second, to develop accessibility to repertoire and research. And third, to cultivate a choral community that is based upon its contribution to this community and not to personal gain. My current Fulbright project is intended to contribute to these goals. I'm working individually with 25 choral conductors from across the country, from the northern zone below Nicaragua to the southern zone above Panama, east to west, and we are exploring a common pedagogy together, which can become the basis for continued study and mutual sharing within a virtual choral community, a Facebook group. There are already more than 40 members to this Facebook group, many who report to each other their successes, their failures, new repertoire finds, and just to talk, which I think is probably the most important thing in the entire process, is that they're simply communicating with each other. Their recent discovery that competition in the context of contribution, as opposed to personal gain, and all within the spirit of mutual respect, is a powerful tool in which to grow individually and collectively. Choral repertoire from Costa Rica is principally arrangements of popular Latin American songs. There are some very accomplished arrangers who are well-versed in the styles and rhythms of Latin American music. These arrangements take on the same characteristic as instrumental charts, and original compositions, as we've seen, are more rare. Of course, the larger body of European, US, and world repertoire are also basic to concert programming. However, access to published scores is extremely difficult, only through travel. And through now the internet, it's growing because of the free access sites for literature, but those aren't always the best editions. So access to public scores is difficult, and most printed music are actually copies of copies of copies. Beginning in 1993, in collaboration with Costa Rican Institute of Choral Music and El Café Choral, under the direction of David Ramirez, I have published nearly 100 titles of Latin American choral music, accessed principally from handwritten manuscripts. Most of these publications are available through Gentry Publication. Costa Rica is a modern success story of choral development. Its growth has taken on the same basic sequence of most all developed choral cultures across the globe, that being introduction to the art form by some outside influence, passing the expertise along to the nationals. However, Costa Rica has done so in only 40 years. Costa Rica stands on the tipping point of a great progress due to its popularity as a tourist destination for choir tours, as well as the value that Costa Ricans place on education. Costa Ricans love choral music, they love to sing, and gladly the world is growing to love Costa Rica as well. A perfect marriage. On Wednesday afternoon, I had really a distinct pleasure to meet the chamber singers of North Dakota State University and their conductor, Michael Weber. And we had fun, and we worked together on 3 popular choral arrangements from Costa Rica, examples of 3 contrasting rhythms, calypso, tambito, and bolero. So I would invite the chamber singers from North Dakota State University to join me, and let's share some music. Congori Shango is an example of a calypso, but a calypso from Costa Rica, from the eastern coast, and a city specifically part of the slave trade route, which collected an enormous amount of rhythmic influence. So Limon, Costa Rica, is this town. The calypso is a distinct rhythm, and I'm going to share some of this with you as I shared with them, so that as they are audiating this rhythm, you can audiate some expectation, okay? And so the calypso has not only a rhythmic place, but it has as well inflection. So as I try to efficiently, meaning in a short time, pass along some information, I generally speak of the rhythms in terms of inflection. Inflection not only of pitch, which also shows up in these arrangements, but also an inflection of timbre, which you would hear if the instrument was here to demonstrate. So I played for them the actual instruments inflecting this rhythm, and I think they have beautifully incorporated it into now their information, and it transforms itself into how they perform. So this is the calypso. Calypso has the don, donki, gon, gon, donki, gon, gon, donki, or gon, gon, donki, gon, gon, donki. It has that rhythmic cell about it. Sir?
These scores are all in your binders?
Oh yes, you do have Kongori Shango in your binders if you have those with you. Hola. We're going to need an E. Can we get an E? Oh, splendid.
Sum da ba da da sum kongori da sum da ba da da sum kongori sum da ba da da sum kongori da sum da ba da da sum kongori sum da ba da da sum kongori da sum da ba da da sum kongori sum da ba da da sum kongori da sum da ba da da sum kongori sum da ba da da sum kongori sum da ba da da sum kongori sum da ba da da sum kongori
The second, which is also in your packet, is Mañanitas de mi Tierra, which is in the tambito rhythm, which is unique to, well, it's uniquely named in Costa Rica as tambito. It's a 6/8 rhythmic feel. Its name, as I say, is particular to Costa Rica, but it is also widely used rhythmic pattern in other Latin American countries under other names. The piece was written by Julio Fonseca, which is one of the first early composers, arrangers of Costa Rica. And this piece was actually arranged, which is why I selected it, by Marco Dusi, the first principal influence in modern choral traditions in Costa Rica. So this rhythm has Dee-dum, dee-dum, bum, dee-dum, bucka-dee, tucka-dee, 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 tucka-dee. That kind of influence, that kind of inflection. Give me that. Let me give you one flat. So, I just love this. Okay, so we have the. Second. A, B, B. B, B, B. Okay. C, B. And the third example is a piece called Caña Dulce, and I think you also have that in your packet. This is an arrangement by Roger Westby. And this piece was written by José Daniel Zúñiga, another of the fine Costa Rican arrangers and composers who wrote the popular song and then arranged by Roger Westby. This is in the style of a bolero. And as I explain here, bolero can be conceived as a as kind of a sensual rhythm and dance, which it is. But in this case, it fits the Latin American tendency to have double meaning. Everything has double meaning. Words have double meaning, phrases have double meaning, sometimes to inspire creativity, but other times just to be risque. The double meaning here is not risque. The double meaning here is that if you look at the translation, this is love of home, love of where one is, love of the dream of settling down and having the family, as it says, with my little house and my cornfield and my oxen. So it was the romantic notion that this was the bolero. So the first part is sort of introductory, sets the tone for the text. The second, middle part, is actually where the rhythm kicks in of the bolero in all of its beauty and glory. And then the third part is the dream, also still in the romantic bolero feel, but it's like with the eyes closed and on the syllable, the la 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 la, conjuring up the feeling. So it's a great little arrangement, Caña Dulce. Remember the last chord? It's all based on that A flat. I mean the next chord. Get there, let's line it up there, because that's very splendid.
Caña dulce favole, quando tenga mi casita, oh que suerte tan bonita, que suerte tan bonita, que mami tendrá que ser. Cuando apunte el vero